Hello, everybody. It is Kevin from Storytellers Union. Welcome back to our channel and welcome to my countdown of my favorite albums of 2025. It's something I do every year. Always excited to do this. I didn't mention in my last video, and I should have. I will get it out of the way, but absolutely, if you enjoy this, if you appreciate this, please give it a like or subscribe, follow, comment. We would love to communicate back and forth with you. I do appreciate that. If you are not familiar with Storytellers Union, we are a band that put out an album this year. Don't worry. That is all the self-promotion. I did not put it on my best of list, but also if you're interested in checking that out, we'd certainly appreciate it. The other thing I'll mention before we get right into our countdown is, as I said right up top about another video, if you haven't yet seen my video on the best box sets, reissues, and other honorable mentions, go check that one out first. It's where I talk about things like this beautiful Bruce Springsteen Nebraska 82 box set, which made my list of best reissues and box sets. I failed to show it in the video, so I wanted to bring it on here as a way of saying, go watch that video first. As I mentioned in that video, I think 2025 was one of the best years I can recall for box sets and reissues. You cannot talk about the best music that was released in 2025 without mentioning some of these special pieces. So you'll want to make sure you check that out. And it does include some albums that just barely missed my top 30. But let's get into that top 30. And we're going to do that by starting with Robert Plant. The Led Zeppelin frontman has had an amazing second act of his career. The album Saving Grace, backed with the band, also called Saving Grace, is a beautiful way to kick off this countdown. If you enjoy Robert Plant's later career work, you will be very much at home with Saving Grace. Two things you can count on with later day Robert Plant, and that is he's going to surround himself with the highest quality collaborators, and then he's going to tackle the songbooks of both American and British roots music. And on Saving Grace, the span of covers is somewhere around a century mark. There's literally 100 years worth of music plucked from Americana and British folk and blues, country, gospel. Definitely worth your time. And that is Robert Plant. Still has that amazing voice too, and it does not seem to diminish with time. Speaking of great voices, number 29, Lucius and their self-titled album. I think it's interesting that they decided to do a self-titled album this far into their career. Honestly, I think my favorite Lucius album may have been their last record, the one that was produced by Brandi Carlile. I can definitely think, though, that a lot of longtime fans of Lucius may not have appreciated Second Nature maybe as much as I did, and only that it expanded their sound quite a bit to include, honestly, some dance pop and some things you might not associate with them. I loved it, but I also love this one, and for the hardcore Lucius fan that maybe missed their core sound on the last album, they will very much appreciate Lucius, the album, because I do think they self-titled it to just sort of denote it was a return to the form that many people are familiar of hearing of them. Amazing vocals. Their harmonies have always been their calling card. They have that and their storytelling in abundance on the self-titled Lucius, which comes in number 29 for my favorite albums of 2025. Moving on to Dean Johnson at number 28. I hope we can still be friends. Dean Johnson was one of my biggest finds last year, and his prior album I honestly thought was better than this one, but the short version of the story on Dean Johnson is basically he told away in obscurity at a bar as just a guy that was there on a particular night of the week, and you could come see him play songs in the Pacific Northwest, and started to get kind of a following. This guy is something special. It's a little unusual to see a singer-songwriter not storm out of the gates in their early days and not make a debut album until he was 50 years old. Dean Johnson put out his debut at actually right on his 50th birthday. So definitely you will want to check out Nothing For Me, Please, his debut, if you haven't. This album is certainly what happens when you have a successful debut that kind of takes the singer-songwriter world off guard. And because of that and the praise that was heaped upon it for album number 2, it definitely sounds more produced. I think there's something about the ragged charms of that first one that I still kind of like, but he's certainly used his money wisely. It seems like he's been in more of a professional studio. There's more backing musicians. It's not as stripped down and focused just on him. Fortunately, his extremely sharp songwriting and very distinct, almost cowboy westernish vocals and that high falsetto that he can also break into are still intact. And these character studies are absolutely worth your attention if you like singer-songwriter folk music. Dean Johnson, I hope we still can be friends. Number 27 is, I think, an album that I should probably call out is the start of what I realized is a bit of a theme in my top 30. It was not intentional, but when I went back and looked at my list, of course, I spend too much time contemplating, second-guessing myself, moving the order around. But when I looked at the list as a whole, one through line that I realized was emerging is that there were a lot of albums in 2025 by frontmen or front women of, who are going solo or having solo projects at very least. And this is the first of those on my list. And that is Rhett Miller, who is better known for his work with the Old 97s and his album, A Lifetime of Riding by Night. Love that title for one. But Rhett, in his day job, is the leader of the Old 97s, who are known for their alt country and their cowpunk. And Rhett has, for the longest time, been doing a sort of parallel solo career. He will release, has a handful of albums, and they do tend to be of the variety that while they still have his very sharp songwriting, which is very distinct for Rhett Miller, wonderful songwriter. But one thing that they don't tend to have is that sort of Tennessee 3 cowpunk version that the Old 97s bring. It is more poppy, and most of his solo records are, and they do tend to be what you think of on a solo record, and that is the kind of music that maybe falls outside of the range of what you do in your main gig. For Rhett Miller, this time around, I would say that isn't quite as much the case, but there is a particular story behind this album. Before he went to record it, he was facing down some vocal surgery, and there was a very good possibility if things did not go well that he might never sing again. So he went into this album feeling as if there's a possibility it could be the last of his career. And I think that he approached the songwriting and the stylistic choices knowing that fact. So he brought in Murray Hammond, who plays bass in the Old 97s. Murray did the producing, and this is probably the most Old 97s album of Rhett Miller's solo career, but it also is one that has quite a bit of intimacy and just gratitude, and it's definitely sung by someone who was thinking that this could be the end of the career. And I think that type of introspection has colored this album in a way that it makes it the best solo album of Rhett Miller's solo career, worth checking out. If you can, go stream A Lifetime of Riding by Night. This next one you absolutely should also stream. And I would say that whether you're a fan of gospel music, whether you're a fan of soul music, whether you're a fan of history, Mavis Staples is a national treasure. The fact that she has an album that came out this past year is recommendation enough to check it out. She is 86. She still sings with a bold power to that voice. It's a little more weathered, but that weathering has only colors the material. It shows the age and wisdom that's in that voice. I think it actually is to the benefit of this album. You definitely, if you've liked Mavis at any point in the past. This is one of her stronger later career works, and Sad and Beautiful World. Number 25, Florence and the Machine, Everybody Screams. It's been a while since we've heard from Florence Welch and her machine, and what she has done is return after, quite honestly, has been a kind of a brutal personal period for her, some personal hardships and tragedies, and she does explore those struggles in this album, but it is not a downer of a record. She is looking for the light within the tragedies and finding it on the other side, and is sharing that in Everybody Screams. She's also sharing it in very traditional Florence Welch and the Machine way, which means heavy orchestration, big bombastic arrangements, very lush production. It's just a gorgeous record, and that voice of hers is still a force of nature. It could peel paint off the walls, blow the ceilings off of buildings, and Florence brings all of that to bear on their latest, Everybody Screams. This next album that comes in at number 24 on my favorites of 2025 is one that I did not see coming, quite frankly. And once I heard it was coming, I wasn't sure that I was even going to care for it, much less be loving it as much as I have been loving it. And it's a more recent album, so this may even move up in my esteem as I spend more time with it. But that is Avett Patton. And if you don't know by that band title, it is a debut record of Avett Patton, but it is a collaboration of very established artists, that being the Avett Brothers and Mike Patton, who, for fans of alternative rock of the 1980s into the 1990s, will remember most famously as the lead singer of Faith No More, as well as the oddball group Mr. Bungle. So that style mixed with the very earnest Americana acoustic folk, Avett Brothers just doesn't seem like a pairing that should work, but it totally does work. And I think part of that is, and this may be a disappointment to some who are just wanting to see, just total weirdness from the Avett Brothers, being influenced by Mike Patton. But this more squarely falls on the Avett side of the fence. So if you do enjoy the Avett Brothers, I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised that it doesn't get too weird, but it gets just weird enough that I honestly feel like there is something about this collaboration between these artists that brings out something they would not have done on their own. Certainly Mike Patton's baritone is an interesting addition to the mix in the traditional Avett Brother harmonies, and I think it's a good one. They are touring together as well, so it could be a very interesting show to check out, as supposedly they're going to try to not just tackle material from this album, but also maybe, work on each other's material. I want to hear the Avett Brothers doing backing vocals on a Mr. Bungle song, but that's neither here nor there. For what we do have here, who knows? Could be a one-off. Maybe they will have had so much fun doing this together that we'll get a second album. It would be interesting to see where they would go with it after this. But there's some amazing songs on this record. And honestly, some of this record I think is superior to what the Avetts have produced themselves over the last couple of records. So check it out. Avett Patton, the collaboration that no one knew that we wanted. That brings us to number 23. I mentioned earlier that we had a theme in my top 30, that theme being solo records from frontmen. And this is one of those. Matt Berninger, who this is his second album, Get Sunk as his second solo record, apart from his main gig in The National. The National, obviously known for indie rock moodiness, sad dad rock, I think is a descriptor that some folks throw around, both a little bit as a joke and some as a slam. But let's face it, if you have a voice like Matt Berninger's, you're going to sound sad, and there's really no point in fighting against what nature gave you, and he does not do that at all. In fact, he leans into it, so these are definitely songs that could have worked as national tune. Sometimes it's hard for that band for all the other projects they have going on. The Desner Brothers are big producers and things, it's sometimes hard for them all to get together and get on the same page. I would go as far to say, though, that not only is this the better of the two Matt Berninger records, it is also very much, I think, on par with, if not superior, perhaps in your opinion, check it out and see what you think, of to the most recent couple of albums by The National. The songwriting is that sharp on this one. It does pretty much distill what it is that Matt does best and puts it on display. And that is Get Sunk, coming in at number 23. Number 22, another frontman going solo, and that is Patterson Hood, who leads the Drive-By Truckers. His album Exploding Trees and Airplane Screams is kind of an outlier when it comes to the multiple solo albums that have made my list. I know that thus far the solo artists, or rather the solo albums, I have said could have possibly been incorporated into the main bands. I don't think that what Patterson has done here would work as Drive-By Truckers album. He truly took the opportunity with his solo album to do work that was outside of the style of what you think of when you think Drive-By Truckers. The Drive-By Truckers have that amazing Crazy Horse Southern rock mashup sound, the dueling, sometimes trio guitars. Here we don't rely so much on guitars as we do piano. And one thing, though, that does remain the same from the Drive-By Truckers to this album by Patterson is he does remain one of our absolute best songwriters, particularly when it comes to writing about the South. Often he is referred to as a Southern Gothic writer. I think that with the more stripped back piano based approach here, what you get is a lot more focus maybe on the lyrics that you can, fully understand and immerse yourself in the wonderful stories that he is telling here. And it's just an incredible body of work. I think that a lot of credit can go to the Decemberists, Chris Funk, who was the producer here, and he probably deserves credit for convincing Patterson to go forward with a less guitar-based sound, but it is very much to the benefit of this particular set of songs and songwriting. Go check out Patterson Hood and his album Exploding Trees and Airplane Screams. Number 21, Car Seat Headrest, The Scholars. The rock opera as a form of music probably had its heyday in the 70s, and you don't have too many folks trying that sort of ambitious big swing anymore. And Car Seat Headrest go for it on The Scholars. This is it's a rock opera, and a very, very good one also. It is set at a fictional university. The lead singer of Car Seat Headrest, actually, Car Seat Headrest is basically Will Toledo and some side people, but he decides on this one to get into character, and it's basically what happens on the campus. Each song is told from the perspective of a very different fictional character at this fictional university. And I know that rock is not exactly having a moment right now, but it's especially strange when rock is not at the cultural zeitgeist to decide to go big. And this is definitely betting big, following Will Toledo does here, his heroes when it comes to classic rock operas. And you think of the famous ones, you think of folks like David Bowie and, of course, The Who. And both of those influences are on full display here. It is a wild album with long songs. And if you take the songs out of context, you can still enjoy them. You don't necessarily have to follow the plot. The plot is actually pretty easy to follow, and maybe more so than what you would get from a lot of rock operas. And also, even though the songs themselves can stretch out, the overall album length is not daunting. So you definitely should not be intimidated when you hear that it's a rock opera. I know that people can be divisive on those. This is a very, very good one. One of the better guitar records, which there's not as much guitar rock that gets released as again, not the heyday of guitar rock right now, but still one of my absolute favorite genres. Car seat headrest is doing it very well, which brings me into the top 20 and another guitar rock band, and that is Franz Ferdinand. I shouldn't say that they are entirely a guitar rock band, because they are sort of a dance rock band that also utilizes guitars but does not forget the beat. That is kind of what was their calling card. It is a welcome return here on the Human Fear. It matches up to the highlights of their heyday, so you do get that very danceable, very catchy earworm Franz Ferdinand style. The Scottish band has once again delivered with another winner here, and that is The Human Fear. Dipping into the teens, I said earlier and have given several entries into my list thus far of frontmen who are leaving their main act. This one's a little bit of a different take on that, because yes, Jason Isbell is usually Jason Isbell in the 400 unit, but obviously the 400 unit are a backing band. He's not an equal member of that band, but he does choose to go it alone here. And this is really and truly the first solo album that Jason has ever done. Obviously, Jason is huge in the Americana and alternative country industry. The 400 unit are a powerhouse rock / country rock band. So he goes solo here, and he does so by stripping things back to pretty much an acoustic record. And yes, if you know anything about this album at all, and know anything about Jason Isbell at all, he did have a high-profile divorce this year, and so this album, Foxes in the Snow, does touch on that. The unusual thing about this divorce record is that the other part of that divorce is also an artist. And so typically when we get these breakup records, you only get one side of the picture. But Amanda Shires, Isbell's former wife, is also on my countdown. So more on that later. So we do get the he said, she said. This is the he said. And there are some, he's just too good a songwriter. Even without the powerful backing of the 400 unit, you're going to get some memorable winners. There are definitely songs on this album, even in the stripped back format, they're going to just hit so hard that you would hope that they become part of a ongoing set list, and will make it even the 400 unit shows down the line. That's Jason Isbell's Foxes in the Snow. Wonderful songwriting, Americana style. Hamilton Lighthouser and this side of the island. Hamilton used to front the indie rock band The Walkmen. They were big in the early aughts. They had their moment. He has done several solo albums now. This is the best of the bunch. The critical acclaim on this one is almost matching what the Walkmen received back in their early days. There is a very personal record. There's a lot of disillusionment when it comes to our current state of affairs, as well as his own personal state of affairs that Hamilton works through on this record. It is not dark, though. The music is bright, and he does have a very distinct bellow. So if you enjoyed that with the Walkman, you definitely want to make sure you don't sleep on this solo work. And happened to see him live this past year. He was an opening act, but an amazing opening act for Father John Misty. Lucinda Williams was on the bill. It was a great triple bill, and you'd think with those names that someone like Hamilton would get lost. It went over really well because he concentrated on this set of songs, and even though most of the audience didn't know who he was, they walked away fans for sure. Number 17, The Hives. Forever the Hives, and indeed they are forever the Hives, because they don't break, rather they don't fix what isn't broken, and what is not broken is their sound. I know a lot of bands chart their success by artistic growth and not repeating themselves, but then there are some bands that manage that weird trick of repeating themselves, giving you exactly what you want, but also making it different enough that it doesn't feel like it's just a retread. AC/DC is a band that comes to mind for me that do that just as good as anyone. The Hives are amongst that group also. They are snotty, swaggery, Stonesy. It's sort of like if the Rolling Stones were more of a punk band. And so you get these quick 2-minute blasts of just attitude and guitar greatness, and then it goes. So part of, I think, what makes their particular success possible is they can repeat the formula in such quick blasts that it never overstays its welcome. By the time you reach the end of Forever the Hives, you'll want to just hit repeat and hear it again. This one is a fun one that you should put on and make sure your windows are down. Forever the Hives, one of the better garage rock albums you're going to hear. Which brings me to the last entry in this episode, and that is Buddy Guy. Ain't Done with the Blues. Much like Mavis Staples, who I talked about earlier, I should just have to say Buddy Guy put out a record in 25, and that is all the recommendation you would need to know that it's something you should hear. Because just like Mavis, Buddy is a national treasure of the blues and is still doing it at 89, which is amazing. No one would have expected, though, that an 89-year-old Buddy Guy would put out a blues record this vital. This was my favorite blues release of the year, which is anytime you can get more Buddy Guy, it is a gift. Buddy is retired, or soon be retiring from the road as far as live performance. But it's good to know that there's still a possibility that we may not have heard the last on record of Buddy Guy. A highlight here I would suggest checking out is I Don't Forget, which is in some ways an outlier because many of the songs on this album feature his very famous sounding electric guitar. This one he strips back to more of an acoustic, laid back song about the many changes he has seen in our country, in his life. And obviously it is a long life, so he has lived through quite a bit of history, and it is a very powerful and moving song. I will say, though, that also one thing to recommend this album by, if you're just a fan of the blues in general, there are a lot of guest stars, which is not unusual for a artist the age of Buddy Guy to bring in others. And it's everyone from Peter Frampton to Kingfish, Joe Bonamassa, Joe Walsh. You just get a ton of guests on here. I sometimes worry when you get too many guests that they do the heavy lifting. Not here. Buddy Guy is Buddy freaking Guy, the best guitarist to come out of the blues, the bridge between blues and rock and roll. He was the favorite guitarist of Eric Clapton. He was the favorite guitarist of Jimi Hendrix. He was the favorite guitarist of Stevie Ray Vaughan. That should also tell you something. I'm sure you're probably familiar with Buddy Guy, but if you have not checked out any of his work in a while, you will be pleased to know that he is still out there doing it at 89. And Ain't Done with the Blues is a perfect reminder of just how vital an artist he still is. Check it out. Ain't done with the blues and ain't done with this list. This is just the first half of my top 30 best albums of 2025. Again, if you haven't subscribed or commented, please do so. We would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you think of the first half of this list. Be sure to check out my part of the video that shows the best box sets and reissues. And then stay tuned, because in our final episode of this 3-part video series, we will start counting down, beginning with number 15 and going all the way to my favorite album of 2025. Until then, this is Kevin, and I will see you next time.